First alarm sounded 11 seconds into the baseline scan. I remember looking up from my intake log and thinking, equipment fault. It had to be. The alert tone was the one reserved for acute systemic shock. The triple pulse that meant a subject was hemorrhaging internally, crashing from toxin exposure, or had simply stopped being viable on the table. I had heard it twice in my career, both times correctly. I silenced it, reset the primary array, and restarted the scan from the beginning. The alarm sounded again at 9 seconds. "Pell," I said. The calibration record on scanner 2. My junior recorder was already moving. The human, one Dr. Aaron Marsh, xenobotanist, cleared for a 6-month research attachment to Maravan Station, sat on the intake platform with his legs hanging over the edge. He was holding a data slate in both hands. He had been reading it when we began the scan. He was still reading it. He had not looked up. The calibration record on scanner 2 was clean. Last serviced 14 days ago. 0 drift on thermal, 0 drift on cardiac, 0 drift on the adrenal index array. I pulled the raw numbers from the readout and looked at them the way you look at a sum that keeps coming out. Core temperature, 37.1 degrees standard, elevated. In a Valesi or a Marath, that reading alone would mean fever, organ stress, inflammatory cascade. In a human, according to the intake species chart on my console, it was listed under the column marked nominal. Rate, 72 beats per minute. Sustained, rhythmic, no irregularity. On any other species in our processing database, resting rate above 60 was tachycardic. I had once triaged a Tarathi diplomat 68 and called a medical team. Adrenal index, 14, 2 micrograms per deciliter. That number sat in the red band on every chart we used. Every chart. The red band was labeled acute stress combat activation. The Tarathi diplomat I just mentioned had tested at 11.4 during what he later described as the most frightening moment of his life. I reset the scanner a second time. Full hardware reset, not just a recalibration. Powered the emitter array down to cold and brought it back up. Ran a phantom scan on the empty air beside Dr. to confirm baseline 0. The phantom scan returned 0. The scan of Dr. Marsh returned the same numbers. "Pell," I said, "is he moving?" Pell looked at the human. The human turned a page on his data slate. "No," Pell said. "I requested scanner 3 from the secondary bay. 4 minutes to bring online." During those 4 minutes, Dr. Marsh read his data slate, set it down once to stretch his neck, picked it up again, and asked whether the intake process usually took this long. I told him we were running a supplemental check. He said that was fine and went back to reading. Scanner 3 returned identical numbers. I stood at my console for a moment, with both results on the display side by side. My training covers a range of scenarios: equipment failure, subject contamination, rare metabolic disorders, exposure to specific radiation types that can distort the adrenal index reading. None of them produce consistent results across 2 independent scanners after a full reset. None of them produce results that match the species intake chart under nominal. I called Dr. Fenis Oru. She was the station's medical director. She had 20 years in biological assessment and had personally processed intake for 41 species, including 3 first contact classifications. When I transmitted the scan results to her console, she did not say anything for a long time. "Pell," I heard her say over the comm line, even though I hadn't put her on speaker, because her voice was loud enough to carry me the human physiological baseline document from the interspecies medical registry. There was a pause. "It's not in the registry," Pell said. "Try the conclave database, the raw xenobology files, not the summary sheets." Another pause, longer. "I have it," Pell said. Dr. Oru arrived in the suite 3 minutes later. She was a short, precise woman, velethary, gray-robed, kind of professional, who does not show what she is thinking. She stood at my console and looked at the scan results. Then she looked at Dr. Marsh. He had finished with his data slate and was now sitting with his hands in his lap, looking at the ceiling. He appeared to be doing nothing at all. "Dr. Marsh," she said. He looked over. "Yes? Are you experiencing any physical distress at this moment?" He considered it. "My lower back is a little stiff from the transit pod. Nothing serious. Are you in pain?" "No." "Have you been in recent physical conflict? Exertion? Rapid temperature change?" He looked at her with the mild expression of a person who has been asked a strange question and is being polite about it. I got off a transport shuttle. I walked down a corridor. I sat here. That's been my morning. Dr. Oru turned back to the console. She opened the conclave xenobiology file and moved through it to a section I could now read over her shoulder. The section was headed Homeostatic Baseline Human, Tehran. The values listed there matched precisely the numbers on my display. She closed the file. Varesh, she said. Run a comparative index. Map Dr. Marsh's current readings against the acute stress profiles for Valesi, Tarathi, and Velathari. I ran it. The results built column by column on the display, one species at a time. The Valesi acute stress profile, recorded from subjects in documented mortal crisis scenarios, showed adrenal index 13.1, core temperature 36.8, heart rate 68. Dr. Marsh's resting readings were higher. The Marath combat activation profile, drawn from field recordings of Marath soldiers at the point of contact with hostile forces, showed adrenal index 14.0, core temperature 37.0, heart rate 74. Dr. Marsh's resting readings were within measurement error of that profile. He was not a soldier. He studied plants. I looked at the numbers for a long time. Then I looked at Dr. Marsh. He was looking at the ceiling again. His jaw moved slightly. He was working something between his teeth. The remnant of whatever he had eaten before the intake appointment. So those numbers are normal, I said. It was not really a question. Dr. Oru picked up her data tablet and made a notation. For the species, yes. Every human we have baseline data on falls within a narrow range of those values at rest. The adrenal index does not spike further under moderate stress. It is already at what we would classify as maximum sustainable output. Thought about that. What does it do under actual stress? ComSat stress. Injury. She made another notation. She did not look up from the tablet. It exceeds our instrument's rated range. The conclave files note that the upper-end recordings were flagged as sensor errors and discarded before anyone reviewed them closely. I looked at the display. I looked at Dr. Marsh. He had pulled out a small container, food of some kind, pale block, and was eating it slowly, still looking at the ceiling, apparently thinking about something that had nothing to do with us. He's been sitting there for 22 minutes, Pell said quietly. Yes, I said. He asked about the cafeteria. I know. The numbers on the display had not changed. They would not change. He would finish his food and slide off the platform, and ask me how to get to his assigned quarters, and walk down the corridor with that slight stiffness in his lower back, and every instrument we had would read him as a species in the last moments of systemic collapse. Dr. Oru closed her tablet. File the intake as nominal. Update the threshold flags for human subjects. Set the ASARM ceiling at twice the current red band limit. She paused. It won't be enough, but it will stop the suite from alerting every time one of them sits down. She left. Pell logged the scan results in silence. I watched Dr. Marsh eat the last of his food and seal the container and look over at us with the patient expression of a man who has been waiting a reasonable amount of time and would like to know what comes next. All finished, I told him. You're cleared for station access. The cafeteria is on level 4. He thanked me and left. I sat at the console for a few minutes after he was gone. The display still showed his numbers. Already archived, already annotated, already flagged for the updated threshold file that would go out to every intake suite in the Maravon complex by end of shift. I read the numbers one more time. Then I went to update my own intake log, and I wrote a single line in the notes field that I suspect will be the most honest thing I have ever recorded in a professional document. We flagged him as dying. He was reading.